E.T. Phone Home.
E.T. Phone Home. With those three words, Steven Spielberg's E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial became one of the most beloved movies of all time. Released in 1982, this heartwarming tale of friendship between a lonely boy and a stranded alien shattered box office records and touched audiences worldwide. But behind the glowing finger and Reese's Pieces was a production filled with wild stories, close calls, and fascinating twists. Let's dive into 20 facts you didn't know about E.T. E.T. didn't just pop out of Spielberg's imagination. His design was heavily inspired by a painting by Mexican artist, Oscar-winning designer Carlos Rambaldi, who created the alien's animatronics. Spielberg reportedly also drew on a surreal painting of Carl Sandburg by artist Walter Keane, which featured large, soulful eyes that he thought conveyed both innocence and wisdom. Rambaldi then built E.T. with 150 moving parts in its face, making it incredibly expressive for the time. Spielberg wanted the alien to look strange but lovable, childlike but old. The mix of wrinkles, glowing eyes, and awkward proportions was carefully chosen to make audiences empathize. E.T. wasn't supposed to be scary. He was supposed to feel vulnerable. Judging by how many people cried in theaters, the design nailed it. Ironically, early test audiences thought E.T. looked too weird, until they heard that laugh. Then he was instantly adorable. Did you ever notice the connection between E.T. and Star Wars? Spielberg and George Lucas were close friends, and they sprinkled references to each other's movies in their work. In E.T., during the Halloween scene, the alien sees a child dressed as Yoda and reacts like he recognizes him. It's a wink to fans, but Lucas took it further. In Star Wars: The Phantom Menace, 1999, you can actually spot members of E.T.'s species in the Galactic Senate. That means, canonically, E.T. exists in the Star Wars universe. Fans have had a field day with this Easter egg, debating whether E.T. himself was a Jedi. After all, he makes spikes fly, heals wounds, and communicates telepathically. Sound familiar? Whether it was just playful cross-promotion or a serious sci-fi crossover, it's one of the coolest hidden connections in movie history. E.T. Phone Yoda, anyone? Today, Reese's Pieces are forever linked with E.T., but that product placement almost didn't happen. Spielberg first approached M&M's for the film, but Mars, Inc. turned him down, thinking audiences wouldn't want to associate candy with a weird alien. Big mistake. Hershey's jumped at the chance, letting Reese's Pieces become E.T.'s snack of choice. The results were astronomical. Sales of Reese's Pieces reportedly tripled after the movie's release. It became one of the most successful product placements in film history. Hershey even ran special promotions with E.T. on the packaging, cementing the connection. To this day, whenever someone sees those orange, brown, and yellow candies, they think of a glowing finger and a trail leading to adventure. It's proof that sometimes the smallest choices, like which candy an alien eats, can change pop culture forever. So tell me, if you were a kid in 1982, would you have followed that candy trail? And if not, what is your favorite candy? Let us know in the comments below, and leave a thumbs up for more sugar content. Most movies are shot out of order for budget reasons, but Spielberg made the rare choice to film E.T. in chronological sequence. Why? Because he wanted the child actors, Henry Thomas, Drew Barrymore, and Robert McNaughton, to experience the story in real time. That way, their emotions during the goodbye scene at the end were genuine, since it was also their real farewell to E.T. and the production. Spielberg even kept the animatronic E.T. hidden between takes, so the kids would feel like they were interacting with a real creature. This unusual approach worked brilliantly. The young cast's performances feel authentic and heartbreaking, even by adult standards. Drew Barrymore was only 6 years old, yet her tears in the finale still make audiences cry today. It's a reminder that sometimes breaking Hollywood rules is exactly what gives a movie its magic. And in E.T., that magic still shines. If you've only seen the later versions of E.T., you might remember the government agents carrying walkie-talkies during the climactic chase. But in the original 1982 release, they were armed with shotguns and rifles. Spielberg later admitted he regretted including real weapons in a children's film. So when the movie was re-released in 2002, he digitally replaced the guns with radios. The change sparked controversy, with many fans arguing that altering the film sanitized history. Even South Park parodied it in their movie. Eventually, Spielberg himself reversed his stance, saying the original should be preserved as it was. Today, both versions exist, but most fans prefer the original gun-toting agents. The debate over guns highlights how even small visual details can change the tone of a movie. It's one of those cases where Spielberg's perfectionism clashed with fan nostalgia. Which side are you on? E.T.'s voice wasn't just the product of one person, it was a blend of strange sounds. Sound designer Ben Burtt, who also created the voices of R2-D2 and Darth Vader's breathing, pieced together E.T.'s speech using an unusual mix. The bass voice came from a woman named Pat Welsh, a heavy smoker whose raspy tone gave E.T. his distinctive sound. Burtt then layered in recordings of animals, including raccoons, otters, and even an elderly chain-smoking man he met in a grocery store. The The result was a voice that felt alien yet oddly human, vulnerable yet wise. Spielberg wanted E.T. to sound instantly recognizable, and Bert delivered. To this day, when people hear that wheezy E.T. phone home, they know exactly who it is. It's wild to think one of cinema's most iconic voices was stitched together from a smoker, a raccoon, and a few lucky accidents. Drew Barrymore was only 6 years old while filming E.T., and Spielberg encouraged her to believe that the alien was real. To make her performance authentic, he kept the animatronic moving between takes, so it seemed alive. Barrymore would often talk to E.T. on set, asking it questions and treating it like a pet. In one interview, she admitted she even tried to sneak food to it. Spielberg didn't break the illusion, letting her genuine reactions carry through on screen. That innocence made Gertie's relationship with E.T. so believable. Critics praised her for being a natural, but really, she was just being herself around what she thought was a living creature. Decades later, Barrymore still gets emotional talking about her friend from the set. It's proof that sometimes a little childlike wonder, and a director who knows how to protect it, can create movie magic that lasts forever. Bringing E.T. to life wasn't cheap. The animatronic puppet, designed by Carlo Rambaldi, cost around $1.5 million to build, a huge portion of the film's budget. It had hundreds of moving parts in its face alone, operated by a team of puppeteers with wires and hydraulics. The puppet was so fragile that certain movements could only be done once before repairs were needed. Spielberg often had to film around technical breakdowns, waiting for the crew to fix E.T.'s blinking eyes or twitching hands. For scenes where E.T. had to walk, child actors with prosthetic costumes were used, including a 10-year-old boy born without legs who could walk naturally on his hands. The result was a seamless blend of techniques that fooled audiences completely. Nobody thought of gears and hydraulics. They just saw a living, breathing alien. That's the brilliance of practical effects in the pre-CGI era. The iconic flying bike scene, arguably the heart of E.T., was almost cut. Spielberg struggled to find a way to film it convincingly on a limited budget. Special effects artist Dennis Muren eventually used a combination of blue screen, miniature models, and carefully composited shots to pull it off. The kids were filmed riding bikes against blue backgrounds, while the night sky and moon were added later. The effect wasn't perfect, but Spielberg knew it didn't need to be. It just needed to feel magical. When John Williams' score swells and the bikes rise over the treetops, audiences didn't care about technical imperfections. They cheered, cried, and remembered it for life. That single image, the bikes silhouetted against the moon, became the logo of Spielberg's Amblin Entertainment. Without it, E.T. might not have been the same cultural phenomenon. Did that moonlit bike ride make you cry the first time you saw it? Be honest in the comments, and if that bike still brings you to a happy place, remember to hit that like button. Unlike many sci-fi films, E.T. wasn't shot on elaborate sound stages for its main scenes. Spielberg wanted the story to feel grounded, so he used real suburban neighborhoods in California as the backdrop. Elliot's house was an actual home in Tujunga, Los Angeles, and the interiors were built to look authentically messy, like a real family lived there. Spielberg instructed the set decorators to clutter the house with toys, pizza boxes, and laundry, details rarely shown in polished Hollywood movies. That messy authenticity made audiences feel like they were watching an ordinary American family, which made the arrival of E.T. feel even more extraordinary. By placing the fantastical inside the familiar, Spielberg created contrast that amplified the magic. It's why kids across America could see themselves in Elliot's world. The story wasn't happening in some faraway galaxy. It was happening right in their backyard. The emotional hospital sequence, where government agents surround and study E.T., left many young viewers shaken. Spielberg intentionally shot it with harsh lighting, medical equipment, and sterile suits to make E.T. seem truly vulnerable. The scene was so intense that some children reportedly cried and had to be comforted by parents in theaters. Spielberg later admitted he wanted kids to feel the same fear Elliot felt, like their best friend was being taken away. On set, even the child actors were upset. Henry Thomas, who played Elliot, said he could barely hold back real tears while watching the animatronics die on the table. This raw heartbreak is part of why the movie's ending feels so cathartic. Spielberg took a huge risk by traumatizing his young audience, but it paid off. Millions still remember crying in theaters, hugging their parents, and hoping E.T. would somehow come back to life. Henry Thomas's audition for Elliot is legendary. Spielberg simply asked him to improvise a scene where government agents were trying to take away his alien friend. Thomas burst into tears instantly, sobbing with so much authenticity that Spielberg reportedly started crying too. By the end of the audition, Spielberg said, "Okay, kid, you've got the job." The tape is now famous online, showing a 10-year-old delivering one of the most convincing performances ever seen in a casting session. Thomas later said he drew on the grief of losing his pet dog to summon the tears. That emotional honesty became the foundation of E.T. Without Thomas's vulnerable performance, the movie might not have worked. Spielberg always said the film depended on the believability of Elliot's connection to E.T., and Thomas nailed it from the very first take. Sometimes one audition changes Hollywood history. Most movies are edited to fit the score. But with E.T., Spielberg reversed the process. When John Williams first conducted the flying bike sequence, the timing didn't quite work with the edited footage. Instead of forcing Williams to adapt, Spielberg re-edited the entire scene around the music. It was a rare case of the visuals bowing to the score, and it paid off beautifully. The swelling strings, the soaring brass, and the rhythmic crescendos synced perfectly with the bikes lifting into the sky. That collaboration created one of the most iconic marriages of sound and image in film history. Spielberg later said Williams' music was the soul of the film. Without that score, the magic of E.T. would not have resonated nearly as strongly. It's a reminder of the power of music in storytelling. Sometimes the soundtrack doesn't just accompany a film, it defines it. Here's one that surprises many fans. After the success of E.T., Universal Studios begged Spielberg for a sequel. He and writer Melissa Matheson even drafted a treatment called E.T. 2, Nocturnal Fears. The sequel would have introduced evil, carnivorous aliens who kidnap Elliot and his friends, forcing E.T. to return and save them. The tone was darker, scarier, and much less heartwarming. Spielberg ultimately scrapped the idea, saying it would rob the original of its virginity. He didn't want to ruin the innocence and wonder of the first film with a horror-tinged sequel. Fans only learned about this abandoned project years later when the outline surfaced online. Today, most agree Spielberg made the right call. Can you imagine if E.T. became a franchise about alien wars instead of a touching story about friendship? The magic would have been lost. Would you have watched a scarier E.T. 2, or was Spielberg right to protect the original? Let us know in the comments below. And remember to subscribe for more videos like this. When E.T. was released in 1982, nobody expected it to dethrone Star Wars as the highest-grossing film of all time. But that's exactly what it did, earning nearly $800 million worldwide during its run, a staggering number for the era. For 11 years, E.T. held the crown as the biggest movie ever, until Jurassic Park, also directed by Spielberg, took the title in 1993. What's remarkable is how E.T. achieved this without flashy space battles or massive special effects. Instead, it relied on heart, character, and universal themes of love and belonging. Audiences went back to see it again and again, often bringing their families along. The box office success proved that heartfelt storytelling could beat spectacle. Spielberg wasn't just competing with George Lucas. He was showing Hollywood that emotion could win over explosions. And judging by the tears shed, he was absolutely right. E.T. wasn't just a Hollywood hit. It reached the White House. In 1982, President Ronald Reagan hosted a special screening of the film for himself, First Lady Nancy Reagan, and members of Congress. The movie reportedly left many politicians teary-eyed, proving its emotional power crossed party lines. Rumors even spread that Reagan joked afterward about knowing a few things about aliens himself, a comment that conspiracy theorists still debate today. The screening highlighted how E.T. became more than just entertainment. It was a cultural event. Even the most powerful leaders in the world couldn't resist its charm. Spielberg later said he was touched by how universally the story connected, from children in theaters to lawmakers in Washington. When a family film can make Congress cry, you know you've created something timeless. Who needs political speeches when a glowing alien finger says it all? Not everything about E.T. was magical. In 1982, Atari rushed out an E.T. video game for the holiday season, hoping to cash in on the movie's success. The result? One of the most infamous flops in gaming history. The game was confusing, buggy, and widely hated. Millions of unsold cartridges were reportedly buried in a New Mexico landfill, turning into urban legend until 2014, when excavators actually dug them up. The disaster contributed to the video game industry crash of 1983. Spielberg himself was embarrassed by the tie-in, admitting he approved it without much oversight. Ironically, the failure became part of E.T.'s legacy. While the movie was a box office miracle, the game became a cautionary tale about rushing products. Today, collectors pay big money for surviving cartridges, proof that even disasters can become cultural treasures. Who knew E.T.'s finger could point to both glory and ruin? One of Spielberg's smartest moves was keeping E.T. hidden for much of the first act. Audiences only saw glimpses, a glowing hand, a shadow, a pair of eyes peeking from the shed. This built suspense and curiosity, much like Jaws did with the shark. Spielberg knew that revealing the alien too early would ruin the wonder. By the time Elliot lures E.T. with Reese's Pieces and finally makes contact, viewers were hooked. This slow-burn reveal turned a rubber puppet into a creature of mystery and awe. Child audiences in 1982 were on the edge of their seats, waiting for the big reveal, and when it happened, E.T. instantly became lovable. Modern directors often cite E.T. as a masterclass in pacing, reminding filmmakers that what you don't show can be just as powerful as what you do. Mystery, when handled right, makes magic. Spielberg toyed with multiple endings for E.T. One idea was to end with Elliot returning to his friends, trying to explain what happened, leaving the alien's fate ambiguous. Another considered showing E.T. back on his home planet. Ultimately, Spielberg chose the emotional farewell at the spaceship, with E.T. telling Elliot, I'll be right here. The simplicity of that goodbye became one of the most famous closing scenes in cinema. Spielberg later said he didn't want to show E.T.'s home because the story wasn't about aliens, it was about friendship. By focusing on the emotional bond, the ending delivered tears instead of spectacle. It also left audiences with just enough mystery to spark imagination. Sometimes the best endings are the simplest ones, and in this case, it made the film immortal. Elliot may have lost his friend, but the audience gained a timeless memory. Before E.T., family films were often light-hearted comedies or fairy tales. Spielberg's masterpiece changed the game by blending childlike wonder with real emotional depth. It showed that family films could tackle themes of loss, loneliness, and love without losing their magic. Hollywood noticed, and soon after, studios began producing more ambitious all-ages films, stories that spoke to both kids and adults. Movies like The Goonies, The Never-Ending Story, and Harry Potter all owe something to E.T.'s template. Beyond that, it proved that merchandising and storytelling could work hand in hand, from candy to video games. But at its core, E.T. was about empathy, and that's what audiences carried forward. Spielberg didn't just make a blockbuster, he redefined what a family blockbuster could be. 40 years later, its influence still glows, just like that finger in the dark. Conclusion. And there you have it, 20 wild facts about E.T. the Extra-Terrestrial. From Reese's Pieces saving the day to Ronald Reagan wiping away tears in the White House to one of the worst video games ever made, this movie's legacy is as bizarre as it is beautiful. What began as a simple story about a boy and his alien friend became one of the most beloved films in history. So tell me, is E.T. the greatest family movie ever made, or just the most magical? Drop your thoughts in the comments, hit like, subscribe, and remember, I'll be right here.